In a world of perfect illusions, we search for the glitches that reveal the hidden truth behind the mask. Witness the raw, unfiltered moments where reality breaks and the real story begins to emerge. Subscribe today and help us uncover the secrets within the digital shadows.
"Your brother's moving in next week," my mother said, smiling at me through my own front door like she was announcing a dinner reservation. She was standing in my entryway. My entryway. The one I had painted myself 3 weekends ago in a color called Morning Fog that had taken me 45 minutes to choose, just until he gets back on his feet. Behind her, I could already see 2 cardboard boxes stacked against my freshly painted wall. I had not invited her in. I had come home from a 10-day work trip to Portland to find my mother's car in my driveway, my spare key in her hand, and the particular expression on her face that meant a decision had already been made, and I was simply the last to know. My name is Sarah. I am 31 years old. I am a licensed occupational therapist. I spent 4 years paying off my student loans, 3 years saving the down payment, and one very long closing day, signing my name onto a mortgage for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house in a quiet suburb of Columbus, Ohio. It was not a mansion. It was 980 square feet of everything I had worked for. It smelled like fresh paint and possibility. "Mom." My voice came out quieter than I intended. "What are you doing here?" "I used the emergency key," she said, already moving toward my kitchen like she lived there. "We needed to measure the second bedroom. Derek's mattress is a queen, and we wanted to make sure it fits before the movers come." "The movers? He's not moving in," I said. She turned from my kitchen counter and looked at me the way she always had when I said something she found inconvenient. Patient. Slightly pitying. Like I was a child misunderstanding the rules of a game she had been playing since before I was born. "Sarah." She set her purse down on my counter. "Your brother lost his job. Natalie left him. He's been sleeping on your father's recliner for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. He's not well. He needs stability. You have a whole extra bedroom just sitting there collecting dust. What kind of sister would let her brother sleep on a recliner when she has a perfectly good room going unused?" There it was, the framework. The architecture of guilt that my mother had been constructing my entire life, brick by brick, until it was so familiar I sometimes forgot it wasn't real. "The room isn't unused," I said. "It's my office. You work at a clinic. I also work from home 2 days a week, and I have a desk and equipment in that room." "A desk can be moved," she said with the absolute serenity of someone who had never once in her life had to fight for her own space. "Derek can't be moved. He's fragile right now, Sarah. He needs family." I looked around my kitchen. My pots were hanging in exactly the order I had arranged them. My coffee maker was on the left side of the counter because I had decided that was where it lived. My grocery list was on the refrigerator in my handwriting. Every single detail of this space was mine, and I could feel all of it already beginning to slip. "When did you plan this?" I asked. "You said the movers are coming. You already scheduled movers?" My mother picked up her purse. "Your father and I thought it would be easier to have everything arranged before you got home so you wouldn't have to worry about logistics." I recognized this. A fact accomplished. A reality installed while I was 3 states away. Not a request. A notification. "Get out," I said. She blinked. "Excuse me. I need you to leave my house, Mom. Right now. I need to think." Her face shifted through its catalog of expressions and landed on wounded. "I raised you better than this. Your brother is suffering and you're worried about a desk. Fine. Think. But think about who Derek is to you. Think about what family means." She left. I stood in the middle of my kitchen for a long time, listening to the sound of her car backing out of my driveway. Then I sat down on my kitchen floor, which I had mopped myself 2 weeks ago, and I thought I had loved my brother once with the uncomplicated love of someone who didn't yet understand the patterns. Derek was 4 years older than me, and he had always been, in my mother's eyes, the more delicate one. The one who needed more. When he failed out of his first college, it was a misunderstood gifted child struggling in a broken system. When he blew through the money my parents lent him for a second attempt, it was the economy's fault. When his first marriage ended, it was his wife's immaturity. When Natalie left him 6 months ago, I had heard my mother on the phone with my aunt using the phrase, "She never deserved him anyway." In the meantime, my student loans paid themselves, my down payment saved itself, and my mortgage signed itself. Presumably while I was busy being the self-sufficient one, which in our family translated to the one who needed nothing and therefore got nothing, including, apparently, the right to her own home. I got up off the floor. I splashed water on my face. And then I did something my mother would not have expected. I opened my laptop and I started researching, not how to stop my brother from moving in. I already knew the answer to that one. It was my name on the deed. It was my name on the mortgage. The answer was no. I was researching what would happen if he moved in anyway, because I knew my family. And I knew that no was never really the end of the conversation with them. No was just the beginning of the campaign. I found a real estate attorney on a Tuesday afternoon, a woman named Patricia who specialized in property disputes and who charged $350 for a 1-hour consultation and who was, in my opinion, worth every penny. Patricia explained the difference between a guest and a tenant with the calm efficiency of someone who had watched too many families destroy themselves over real estate. In Ohio, she told me, if someone occupies a residential property with your knowledge and permission and pays no rent and stays more than 28 days, they may begin to accumulate the rights of a tenant, which meant eviction proceedings, which meant 60 days minimum, which meant a court filing, which meant that if Derek moved his queen mattress into my office and I let him stay out of guilt or conflict avoidance or the particular emotional exhaustion of fighting my own mother, I could find myself legally unable to remove him without involving a judge. I asked Patricia what my options were. She said there was one document that could prevent the situation from ever reaching that point. A written, signed, temporary guest agreement establishing the limited and revocable nature of the occupancy with a clear end date, a clear set of behavioral conditions, and explicit language stating that the guest held no tenancy rights under Ohio law. Would he sign it? She asked me. He would if he didn't understand what it was, I said. Patricia looked at me for a moment. Then she smiled. Let me draft something. My mother called me 4 times between Tuesday and Friday. I let them all go to voicemail. On Saturday morning, she showed up at my door again, this time with Derek. My brother was 35 years old and he looked like someone had let the air out of him. He had always been the handsome one in photographs, dark-haired and broad-shouldered, but standing on my porch in a wrinkled flannel shirt, he looked smaller than I remembered. He looked like a man who had spent 6 weeks sleeping on a recliner. I felt something shift in my chest when I saw him. Not capitulation, something older and sadder than that. Grief, maybe, for the version of him I used to believe in. I opened the door. I'm not saying yes to anything today, I said, before either of them could speak. I'm saying come in and sit down and let's talk, that's all. My mother's shoulders dropped 2 full inches with relief. Derek looked at his shoes. We sat at my kitchen table. My mother talked for most of it. Derek's situation, the recliner, the depression, the importance of family, the unused bedroom. She used the word temporary 9 times. I counted. At the end of it, I said, okay, I've thought about it. If Derek is going to stay here, we need to put a few things in writing, for both our protection, insurance purposes, liability, that kind of thing. My mother waved a hand. It's family, you don't need paperwork for family. I do it with everything, I said. I have a signed agreement with my landlord for my storage unit. I have written documentation of my car loan repayment schedule with Dad from 2019. I'm just someone who does better with things written down. I paused. Derek, I want to make sure you're protected too. If anything happened to me, or if there was ever a dispute, I'd want there to be a record that you were here with my permission. It protects you. Derek looked up. He was suspicious, but he was also tired in a way that makes people agree to things. What would it say? He asked. Basically that you're staying here as my guest, not a tenant, that there's no rent because it's family, that the arrangement runs through the end of the calendar year, which gives you 6 months to get back on your feet, that you'll keep the space clean and not smoke indoors and respect quiet hours after 10. I shrugged. Standard stuff. Patricia had written it in plain language on purpose. The lethal clauses were there, embedded in the middle of the mundane ones like depth charges, sleeping quietly in shallow water. Clause 3, occupancy is granted as a personal, non-transferable, revocable license, not a lease or tenancy. Clause 7, guest acknowledges no property rights in the premises and waives all claims to tenancy status under Ohio Revised Code. Clause 11, license may be revoked by property owner at any time with 24 hours written notice. Clause 14, guest consents to property owner's installation and use of home security systems, including interior cameras in common areas for property protection purposes. He was not reading it. He was looking for the end date. 6 months. He found December 31st. He nodded. My mother leaned over his shoulder and spotted the words, no rent. She beamed. Derek picked up the pen. He signed. My mother witnessed it without being asked. I signed my name below his, dated it, and slid 1 copy across the table. That's yours, I said. I'll keep the other. My mother stood up and hugged me. I let her. Over her shoulder, I stared at my kitchen wall and thought about Patricia's voice on the phone. Non-transferable. Revocable. 24 hours. Derek moved in on a Wednesday. By the following Monday, I understood exactly what I had agreed to host. I had set up 2 discrete cameras in the common areas before he arrived. One in the kitchen facing the counters, one in the living room facing the front door. Both connected to an app on my phone. Both disclosed in Clause 14 of the document Derek had signed without reading. I was at the clinic on Monday when my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I checked the feed on my lunch break. My brother was standing at my kitchen counter at 11:43 in the morning, eating cereal directly from the box and watching something on his phone at a volume I could hear through the camera's audio. On the counter next to him were 3 empty beer cans. It was not yet noon. I told myself this was manageable. By the end of the second week, I had documented the following: 8 instances of cigarette smoking on my back porch, which was not indoors, but the smoke came directly through the window I kept cracked over the kitchen sink. 1 incident involving Derek's friend I had never met, sitting on my couch until 2 in the morning. The slow migration of Derek's belongings from the second bedroom into every other room of my house. And 1 phone call I was not supposed to hear because I had come home early and he didn't know I was in the hallway. He was talking to my mother. "She's not going to my mother. She's not going to do anything," he said. "She's too nice. She'll complain, but she won't actually kick me out. She never has." A pause. "Yeah, I know the end date says December, but that's not real. She's not going to make her brother homeless at Christmas. Come on." Another pause, longer. "I'm not worried about the paper. It said guest, whatever. I've been here 2 weeks. In Ohio, that might already." He stopped, lowered his voice. I looked it up. "If she can't prove I'm just a guest, she might have to file, and you know she won't do that to me." I stood in the hallway for a moment after he hung up. He had looked it up. He knew about the 28-day threshold. He was watching the calendar. What he did not know was that I had looked it up first, 5 days before he moved in, sitting across a desk from a woman named Patricia who had drafted a document that had already solved the problem he thought he was about to create. I walked into the kitchen. Derek spun around, phone behind his back. "Hey," he said, "you're home early." "I am," I said. I opened the refrigerator and took out the container of leftover pasta I had made Sunday, and I heated it up, and we ate dinner on opposite ends of my small kitchen table, and I said nothing, because I had learned something from watching people do this wrong. Confrontation is a gift to people like my brother. It gives them something to react to. It creates a story where they're the victim of your anger. It generates sympathy from my mother, who would hear his version before she ever heard mine. I did not want to fight Derek. I wanted to be done with him. I went to my bedroom that night, and I opened my laptop and I ran the background check I was entitled to under Clause 14. Patricia had told me that the guest agreement's disclosure clause gave me the legal basis to conduct one for insurance and property protection purposes. Derek had signed it. The report came back the next morning. I read it 3 times. Derek had not just been evicted from his apartment with Natalie, he had been evicted before that, twice. The first time in 2019, the same year I had lent my father $3,000 that I thought was going toward a family emergency but appeared, from the financial records I was now looking at, to have been used to cover my brother's first eviction judgment. The second eviction was in 2021. He had been sued for $8,000 in property damages. The case was still open. There was something else, a civil judgment from a credit union in the amount of $14,200 for a personal loan default. The judgment was from 8 months ago. The credit union had filed for wage garnishment, but Derek had no wage to garnish because Derek had no job. The judgment was sitting there, accruing interest, waiting for the moment he had an income again. My brother was not between situations. My brother was running from them. He had come to my house the same way he went everywhere, ahead of the consequences, and my mother knew. I thought about the $3,000. I thought about how she had called it a family emergency. I thought about the 9 times she had said the word temporary. I thought about the particular quality of her relief when Derek signed that paper, the way her shoulders dropped. Not relief that her son had a safe place to land. Relief that she had solved the problem, at least temporarily, by installing it in my house. I was not angry. I want to be clear about that. I had moved past anger somewhere around the second eviction record. What I felt was something cleaner and quieter. Clarity. The kind that comes when you finally see the full shape of a thing you've been bumping into in the dark for years. I called Patricia. "He's in violation of Clause 5, I said. Smoking adjacent to the property impacting interior air quality. I have it on video, time-stamped 8 separate incidents. That's enough, she said. I also have audio of him stating his intent to dispute the guest classification and attempt to claim tenancy. That's more than enough. I want to send the notice tomorrow. I'll email you the template tonight. I spent that evening doing 3 things. I wrote the 24-hour notice of license revocation, citing Clause 11 and documenting the specific violations with timestamps. I emailed a copy to Patricia and one to my own email address for the record. I changed the code on my smart lock to a number Derek did not know. And I pulled out the copy of the guest agreement from my desk drawer and I read it again from the beginning, slowly, the way you look at something you built before you test it. It held. The next morning, I slid the printed notice under the door of the second bedroom at 7 a.m. Before I left for the clinic, I had already moved my most important documents from my home office to my car the night before. I was 3 patients into my morning when my phone started ringing. Derek, I let it go. My mother, I let it go. Derek again. Then a number I didn't recognize, which was probably my aunt, who had been recruited as backup in these situations since approximately 2011. I texted my mother one sentence. I mailed you a copy of the guest agreement Derek signed. Please read Clause 11. Then I turned my phone face down and finished my shift. By the time I got home at 6, the situation had evolved. Derek's car was still in my driveway. I walked up to my front door and keyed in my new code and stepped inside, and he was sitting on my couch with his arms crossed, and my mother was standing in my kitchen, and she had apparently let herself in with the spare key again, which I had failed to account for. This is not legal, my mother said, before I'd even set my bag down. You cannot evict your own brother with a piece of paper. It's not an eviction, I said, setting my bag down anyway. It's a revocation of a guest license. Those are legally distinct. He's not a tenant. He signed a document confirming he's not a tenant. There's no eviction process because there's nothing to evict. He has rights. He has 24 hours to gather his belongings and leave, which is more than the document requires and more than he gave me when he planned to move in while I was in Portland. I looked at her steadily. Mom, I know about the 2019 eviction. I know about the $3,000. The kitchen went very quiet. Derek looked at the floor. My mother's face did something complicated that I did not have a name for. That was a private family matter, she finally said. So is this, I said. And I'm handling it. Derek left that night. He did not say goodbye to me. He carried his boxes past me in the hallway and he looked like the air had been let out of him again, more than before, and I felt that older and sadder grief move through me and kept my face still and let it pass. My mother stood at the door after his car pulled out and she looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her before, not wounded this time, not mortared. Something smaller and stranger than those, something almost like recognition. I was trying to help him, she said. I know, I said. You always are. She left. I changed the code on the back door, changed the code on the front door, and went to the couch and sat down in the silence of my own house for a long time. I want to tell you the story ended there, in some clean and cinematic way, with a lesson arriving like the final chord of a song. But the real ending took another 3 weeks and it was more administrative than dramatic. Derek, apparently, had told a version of events to several family members in which I had thrown him out without warning over a technicality. This version spread through my extended family with the efficiency of a group chat, and for about 10 days I received a steady stream of texts from people I saw at Thanksgiving using words like heartless and unnecessary, and, from one cousin, a long message about what Jesus would have done. I responded to none of them. What I did instead was send my mother, by certified mail, copies of both eviction records, the credit union judgment, and the documented property damage claim from 2021. I attached a short note that said only, I love you. I am not a resource. Please stop treating me like one. I do not know exactly what happened after that. My mother called me on a Thursday evening, and she cried, and she did not apologize for what she had done, but she said she hadn't known the full picture. And I think some part of that was even true, and some part of it wasn't. And I said what I meant, and I let the rest go. Derek moved back into my parents' house. He has since found part-time work. The garnishment on his wages when they began was automatic and impersonal, the way consequences usually are when they finally arrive. My second bedroom is my office again. The camera in the living room is still there, mostly because I like knowing the front door is monitored when I travel. My pots are still in the order I arranged them. My coffee maker is still on the left side of the counter. The mortgage I signed has my name on it and no one else's. I have thought a lot, in the months since, about what I was actually afraid of when I came home to find those boxes against my freshly painted wall. It was not the inconvenience. I could have tolerated an inconvenient 6 months. It was not even the violation, though that was real and it mattered. What frightened me was the recognition, instant and visceral, that if I let this happen once, I would spend the rest of my life letting it happen again. That the price of being the self-sufficient one in my family was not just that I got less help. It was that I was expected to be the soft landing for every crash that everyone else was allowed to have. That my stability was not respected as something I had built. It was resented as something I was hoarding and therefore available for redistribution by consensus without my vote. I solved problems for a living. All day, every day, I helped people who had lost function find ways to rebuild it. I was very good at it. And the thing they taught us in school, the thing I had watched prove true 1,000 times on the clinic floor, was that the most important part of recovery is not the intervention. It is the patient choosing to participate in it. No one can recover on behalf of someone else. And no one else gets to use your recovery as the raw material for someone else's. The house is quiet tonight. The second bedroom smells like the lavender candle I keep on my desk. The camera in the kitchen is showing me an empty counter, my pots in their order, my coffee maker on the left. The most powerful thing I ever did was not the document, though the document mattered. It was not the notice, though the notice was necessary. It was the moment I stopped mistaking my own discomfort for a problem that required me to make myself smaller to solve it. I am not a soft landing. I am not a backup plan. I am not an emergency exit for people who have spent years walking toward the wall. I am 31 years old. I have 980 square feet of everything I ever worked for, and every single inch of it is mine.